This is the Libertarian Dilettante, and welcome to episode 10 of Airline Club. So my long-range plane has arrived in London. I'm going to start out by assigning that routes. And because it has long range, I want to find a city that's on the very edge of what's considered Europe. And I think there's one around here somewhere. There it is. Perm. In Europe. Let's plan a flight. I've already determined that there's no competition here, and it has defaulted to my long-range plane that can actually make this flight. So I'm going to go ahead and take all 5 routes. And even though it's a brand new route, because there's not actually a ton of extra demand. Okay, I'm kind of pushing this to the limit because I'm using a bigger plane than I'm used to using. I'm going to start with 4 flights a week. And I'll leave the price at the default. And I could even increase the service quality since it's a longer flight. Okay, let's see how that does. And then I still had some time left with that plane. So I'm thinking I'm going to come back to Ukraine. Crimea is considered part of the Ukraine in this game. So I will plan a flight here. 3 flights a week, that's about right. So this worked out pretty well anyway. I could drop the price, I could raise the service level. I should probably do one of those 2 things. It's not nearly as long as the other one, but certainly too long for my Embraer 120. I'll bring the price down just a tiny bit to help get that started. Okay, I still have 15 slots in London. Oh, and I don't have enough money to buy another Embraer, much less to open any new routes. And I cannot borrow just yet. So I'm going to have to look on the used market, I guess. All kind of bad. Oh, let's sort by condition. This is only a little bit more. Oh, right, but the problem is not that I'm waiting on delivery. The problem is that I don't actually have that much money. So let me buy a plane that I can actually afford. I guess I'll go with this one. And then I can't afford to open any new routes. But that's okay because I'm pretty sure my existing routes can absorb this extra plane. So let's go through the London routes first. This route is actually fine even though it's not at 100%. In fact, if I sort by load factor, my only route that doesn't have 100% is this one, and that's because there was a flight cancellation. Oh, but then I want to be sorted by, I'm going to sort by profit and then airport. That's a pretty good way to do it. So I'm going to go down the list and find places that I want to add flights. Here there's 1,400 direct demand. I'm only at 600 here. I can afford to add quite a lot. Barely half. Sure, let's do this. I've been increasing prices because I've increased it so much, or because I'm adding all these flights. I probably don't want to increase the price too much, but I'll do that. Here, we're still way short of the demand. So I'll add 3 more flights and I'll increase the price. Valencia, we're still way short of the direct demand. So I'll add the last of those flights and I'll increase the price. Cordoba, price increase. Rota, same thing. I'm actually going to come back fairly quickly. I'm going to probably do this episode in 2 parts. So I just want to get these price increases in. If it turns out to start hurting demand too much, then I can walk them back. But I'd like to find the price ceiling. And if I were checking in more often, I could do that much quicker. Because I'm only checking in roughly once a day. And if I came back every 3 hours or so, I could get feedback faster and adjust my prices accordingly. Oh wait, here there's competition. Yeah, I won't make any changes there. These are brand new routes. Naples to Warsaw looks pretty solid. I do have 3 available flights, so I'm going to first increase my my capacity, and I can't really afford a new plane, so that's as much as I can do with Naples. I'm just kind of comparing the direct demand with my own capacity. That one I decided to increase 15%, and I think that's actually 15% of the default price is how that works. Each click is 5%. This one has a little bit of softness in the demand, so I might leave that one alone. This one has kind of struggled a bit, so I guess I'll leave that one alone too. Okay, now it just occurred to me that what I ought to do is find one of these routes and increase the price dramatically. As a general rule, even with these small, efficient planes and a strong market like Europe, you don't want to go too much more than a profit margin of 50%. Like, this is clearly well over 50% already, but because of the Olympics, I can probably afford to bend that rule. And the reason you don't want to do that for the most part is because demand starts dropping off really quickly. But let's try to remember that Granada is a test case, and if we look quickly, I'm at 660. I was charging 611, so I've already made a pretty significant price increase. Here in Granada, I'm going to increase it dramatically. And if I have trouble in Granada, that's my test case. And if I can get away with this, then I'll know that it's safe to increase prices, or at least I'll have reason to believe it's safe to increase prices on a lot of these other routes. Okay, so I still have 4 slots in London, but I can't do much with them until I have more money. So I'm going to come back when I can borrow more. And of course, at some point, I'm going to want a new base, but for now, I guess I'm more constrained by cash than anything else. And if we look here quickly, my cash flow is still positive, and which of course it had better be because I actually took myself down to very little cash, and my profits are stable at around 1 million. Okay, so I'll wrap this up for now and continue in a little bit. All right, so some time has passed and I'm able to borrow money again and expand my operations. I also noticed that I've been playing this game for about 8 days in real life, 8.5 maybe, and about 2 years in game time. Now you may notice there's a date given here. I don't pay too much attention to that, but there's no year, and the game just kind of runs indefinitely. There's no year in the game, basically, so no new planes get released as time goes on. There are no world events or anything. It's kind of an artificial world in that respect. But it still gives you some kind of a time frame to think about. So in the last 2 years, our airline has done pretty well. If you look at the Office tab, you can see our assets are now more than 3 times as high as when they started. So that's a pretty good return for a 2-year investment. And, I need to increase my service quality. You see it's getting pretty close to this level. At some point, it'll go about as high as I want it to, but we're certainly not there yet. So I'm going to take it up to 38, I guess. Okay, still only costing me $50,000 a week, so that's not too bad. Now I've hit 40 reputation, and that means that I can now start making intercontinental flights. And I was looking around the map and found a pretty attractive option, I think. As soon as the flight map loads. Okay, so one possibility would be to fly intercontinental to the United States, which is a very rich market, and I'm sure there are some cities here that are worth flying to and that might even make a good base someday that don't have too much competition. But the problem with that is you need a plane that is capable of making that flight, and those are all really expensive. So what I'm thinking of doing instead is looking to Asia, because Asia is a richer market than Africa, where I could also go. And when I start looking around here, we see Turkey looks fairly saturated. This city is still open, over 1,000 demand. Once the Olympics are over, that will probably drop down to 700 or 800, probably somewhere around 800. I believe that the Olympics bonus is proportional, so it's just 50%. But I kept looking and I noticed, well, at one time Mecca was open, but now Europor is flying there. So if I plan a flight to Mecca, I see they're only providing a small amount of the total capacity, even if this drops down to 3,000 or 2,500. There's still room left over. Medina is also an option. It says over 1,000 demand, no competition, but Baghdad is probably my best option. 11 million people, and although their average income level isn't as high as you generally find in Europe, with 11 million people, we still end up with over 3,000 direct demand. So I'm pretty happy with that. Now, the reason that the United States is a little bit better than Asia geographically is because once people fly from Baghdad to London, it doesn't make sense for them to backtrack into the rest of Europe. And because of the restriction on intercontinental flights, there aren't going to be a lot of flights between Baghdad and Europe. So this is sort of a gateway into Europe, but realistically, it's probably only going to work for the UK, Ireland, maybe Scandinavia. You can see other airlines are providing plenty of options to these locations. In any case, the direct demand alone is quite sufficient for the time being, even at its lower level. So, after the Olympics are over. So I want to fly to Baghdad. Now, the game, as I've mentioned, suggests the cheapest plane that can make that flight. And I'm pretty fond of the Embraer 190. It's fairly cheap. It only costs $40 million. It's relatively fuel efficient. It carries 100 passengers. So for a plane of that size, it's pretty fuel efficient. And so that's pretty much all I care about. The problem is that in order to buy one, I either have to wait for it to be delivered, or I have to buy one on the used market. So here's the used market, and the best plane I can buy that's not extra expensive is at 50%. And as I've mentioned, I just don't like doing that very much. I'm kind of tempted to do it anyway, because my plan now is not only to fly to Baghdad, but I'm thinking I will make it a hub. If we view the airport, we see that no one else has a hub here, even though it's a city of 11 million. And it's only 2.3 million to establish that base. So it's really quite cheap, even if it doesn't end up working out, or later I decide that some other option has more potential. So I'm pretty excited about flying to Baghdad and setting up a hub there. I could do it immediately and just pay a few $1 million extra for a used plane. If we go back to the market, there is this one that's at nearly 100%, and it's only 3.5 million more, but I still feel like that's quite a bit this early in the game. The other option is to pay only 40 million, get a plane at 100%, and I have to wait 8 weeks. So the danger is that in those 8 weeks, someone could come in and set up a flight to Baghdad with a ton of capacity, much as Europort recently has done with Mecca. But even if they do, there should still be room left over for me. If we look at these other options, it's only 2,000 to Ankara, and they've got 4,000 direct demand. Jeddah, which is by Mecca, doesn't have nearly as many passengers as the total demand. So there's no real reason to think that in the next, 12 hours or 16 hours of real time, someone's going to come up with the exact same plan that I did. On the other hand, if they do, I'll have to find something else to do with that plane, I guess. And I guess another thing is, even if I fly there and set up a base, there's really nothing stopping someone else from doing the exact same thing anyway, although they're probably not likely to. Well, they wouldn't necessarily see my base when they set up the route. I don't know. In any case, I'm going to assume that no one else is thinking the exact same thing that I am, and that no one is going to fly in from Madrid and set up a base in Baghdad. If we view the flight map from Baghdad, we can see all of the flights headed in there currently. There is one from Madrid. I've already checked this, of course. And quite a few from East Asia, which is not surprising because if you have a restricted number of intercontinental routes, you're going to end up looking within your own continent, and this is a nice long route to a big city. So once I have my hub established, it's going to be a great place for me to fly to East Asia. So all of these cities that don't have flights yet, and maybe even some of the ones that do, will be great destinations eventually. But in the short run, my plan is just to buy more of those Embraer 120s and fly to Pakistan or Saudi Arabia or wherever I can reach, really, that's within Asia. I already checked, and Cairo is not within 1,000 miles, so that would count as an intercontinental route. So there's the plan. I will definitely be coming back after 8 weeks to set that route up quickly. Currently, I have $8 million and 13 slots in London. So I need to buy another plane anyway. All of my planes are currently fully used. So when I come to the bank, I'm capable of borrowing quite a lot of money, more than I need. But I do remember now that you're only allowed 10 loans, which doesn't sound like a whole lot. This loan will take me up to 5. But if you look at the time remaining on these, there's quite a bit of time left. So at the rate I'm going, I will definitely max out my number of loans, and then I'm going to end up paying early repayment fees to pay off the old loans in order to get new ones. So rather than take a small loan and then plan on taking another small loan later when I need it, I'm just going to go ahead and borrow all of this money, and I'll put it to use relatively quickly. In fact, half of it, more than half of it, is going into a brand new plane. Just to confirm, the weekly payment on this is going to be about $400,000. If we go to the Office tab, you see my cash flow is $1.3 million, so I can afford that. I don't really want to be paying almost a third of my cash towards a new loan repayment, but I feel like I have a good plan for that money, and I'm going to be making quite a bit more income as a result of these investments, so I'll come out ahead. And frankly, that's how I've been able to grow so quickly, by borrowing money and putting it to use quickly on fairly profitable things. So I have 13 minutes left before the end of this week. I'd better make good use of it now. So I will start implementing the plan that I just discussed. Back to the bank, borrow all that money. It's okay to pay some extra interest for 8 weeks. I need planes. Specifically, I need this Embraer. Nope, that's the E2 version. It's a little confusing because the base models and the E2 models, the names look very similar. But this is the one I want. 40 million. I already confirmed that it has adequate range for my plan. So I'm going to place that order. Of course, it will be arriving in London. And I also need another 120 in London for immediate use. I still have $40 million. So my plan for that money is to establish a base, which costs about $4 million, and then I believe I'll get 20 slots immediately. So that's going to be at least 2 planes. That's $16 million. That still leaves me with about $20 million. And probably what I'll end up doing with that is buying additional Embraer 120s for Naples, for example. If we look at Naples, my awareness is still rising. I expect to have more slots in London by the time my new plane arrives. And if I don't, I can just pull slots off of any of these other routes. And actually, I can only fly 3 flights into Baghdad, so I'm going to have to find other routes for that 190 that I just ordered. But in the meantime, I have to find other routes for the plane I just ordered. Okay, and checking my notes, I see that Riga was open the last time I checked. Direct demand is very solid. I can make 5 flights, so I'll do that. And I haven't been back to Spain in a while, have I? That was kind of my original destination out of London. Yeah, I think this one is good. So, still no competition, plenty of demand, even accounting for a 50% drop later on. Well, it would be 1/3 of this, because it's a 50% increase. And that's how math works. 4, 5, create. I have enough money that I can afford to just buy another plane. This might be the last route I open with an Embraer 120 for a little while, though. From here on out, I can increase capacity for a little while. And I'll leave it at the default price because it's brand new. Okay, only 6 minutes left to get my changes in before the end of the week. So I'm going to check my routes, sort by load factor. The brand new ones, of course, are at 0%, but everything else is at 100%. So clearly things are going very well. I'm going to organize them by profit. And you may remember Granada was my test case where I increased the price the most. But I think I'm just going to go through and give 2 clicks to all my prices. So I'll just go through and do this, and I'll probably cut. Oh, so to use up these last 2 slots, I actually think I'm going to buy 1 more Embraer 120. I can always move it to another airport later if I want to. Purchase that. Come back to my routes. I've got 2 slots available. Naples to Warsaw. Oh, I'm actually getting kind of close. Naples to Genoa. We'll get it in just under the wire. Okay, so I've used up all of my slots from both of my airports. So that should wrap it up for this episode. It took a little bit longer than I had anticipated, but that's because I formulated a new plan. And I'll be putting that into action fairly soon.